Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen is poised to form a new government after weeks of intense negotiations, signaling an end to political uncertainty in Copenhagen. The leader of the Social Democrats successfully brokered an agreement with coalition partners, a process that began following the general election held several months ago. This development is expected to provide much-needed stability to the Nordic nation, allowing the new administration to address pressing domestic and international challenges. The specific composition and policy agenda of the new government are anticipated to be unveiled in the coming days. This move solidifies Frederiksen's leadership and sets the course for Denmark's governance for the foreseeable future. A new national poll reveals that a significant majority of voters across the United States are demanding concrete solutions to combat government corruption. Conducted by the Brennan Center for Justice, the survey found that over 70% of respondents consider corruption a major issue, transcending partisan lines. Voters expressed frustration with a perceived lack of accountability and transparency, urging elected officials to prioritize reforms. This widespread sentiment puts considerable pressure on politicians to address public integrity and implement measures to restore trust. The poll results underscore that tackling government corruption remains a pivotal concern for the American electorate. Canada has officially confirmed its acquisition of 26 high-mobility artillery rocket systems, or HIMARS, from the United States government. This significant defense procurement, valued at an undisclosed sum, aims to substantially bolster Canada's military capabilities and enhance its interoperability with NATO allies. The HIMARS units, renowned for their precision strike capability and rapid deployment, represent a modernization of the Canadian Armed Forces artillery arsenal. This purchase follows ongoing efforts to upgrade Canada's defense infrastructure in response to evolving global security challenges. The acquisition marks a major investment in Canada's long-term national security and defense strategy. During his presidency, then-President Donald Trump signed an executive order directing artificial intelligence companies to provide the U.S. government with early access to their most advanced AI models. Issued in late 2020, the order aimed to establish a framework for assessing potential national security risks and ensuring American leadership in the rapidly evolving field of AI. It mandated that developers of powerful AI systems share critical data and insights with federal agencies, including the Department of Defense and intelligence communities, before public release. This move sparked debate within the tech industry regarding innovation, privacy, and government oversight. The order represented one of the initial attempts by a major global power to proactively manage the strategic implications of artificial intelligence. South Carolina Republican gubernatorial candidate Josh Kimbrell has voiced strong concerns regarding what he describes as an executive overreach by government officials. Speaking at a campaign event in Columbia earlier this week, Kimbrell outlined his commitment to limiting the scope of gubernatorial power and enhancing legislative checks and balances if elected. His remarks, which have resonated with conservative voters, focused on issues of emergency powers and administrative regulations. This stance is a central pillar of his campaign platform, distinguishing him from other contenders in the primary race. Kimbrell's emphasis on curbing executive authority highlights a key debate within South Carolina's political landscape. An exclusive draft of Denmark's new coalition agreement reveals a significant policy shift, pledging a more active and engaged role for the Nordic nation within the European Union. The incoming government, led by Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen, plans to increase Denmark's influence in Brussels on key issues ranging from climate policy to security cooperation. This marks a departure from Denmark's historically more cautious stance on EU integration, reflecting a growing desire to shape European policy amid global uncertainties. The commitment is expected to be formally announced as the new government's agenda is unveiled in the coming days. This strategic pivot signals Denmark's intention to be a more vocal and influential player on the European stage. Senegal's newly elected President Bassirou Diomaye Faye has officially formed his first government, notably sidelining prominent members of the party led by his former ally, Ousmane Sonko. The formation of the new cabinet, announced in Dakar, follows Faye's landslide victory in the recent presidential election, where he campaigned alongside Sonko. While Sonko himself was appointed prime minister, the ministerial appointments indicate a deliberate consolidation of power by President Faye, granting key portfolios to his loyalists rather than Sonko's PASTEF party members. This move suggests a carefully orchestrated political strategy to establish Faye's independent authority and direction for the West African nation. Senegal's newly inaugurated President Bassirou Diomaye Faye has swiftly moved to consolidate power, forming a new government after dismissing the previous prime minister and cabinet. The executive reshuffle, announced from the presidential palace in Dakar, marks a decisive step for President Faye following his recent electoral victory. This action is customary for new leaders seeking to implement their mandate, but it also underscores the complete overhaul of the nation's leadership. The new administration is expected to focus on economic reforms and governance issues as promised during Faye's campaign. This decisive action by President Faye firmly establishes his authority and vision for Senegal's future. South Carolina has enacted a new social media law that includes a significant provision banning autoplay videos on platforms accessible within the state. The legislation, signed into law earlier this month, aims to enhance user control, reduce unwanted data consumption, and mitigate exposure to potentially objectionable content. This measure specifically targets the automatic playback of video content without user initiation, a common feature on many popular social media sites. While proponents laud the move as a victory for consumer choice and digital well-being, tech companies are now evaluating the operational and compliance implications. South Carolina's new law represents a notable regulatory step by a U.S. state in addressing specific functionalities of social media platforms. A Republican senator in Pennsylvania is once again pushing legislation aimed at eliminating ballot drop boxes and satellite voting sites across the Commonwealth. State Senator Jake Peterson introduced the bill this week, arguing that such measures are necessary to enhance election security and prevent potential fraud. This renewed effort follows previous unsuccessful attempts to restrict these voting methods, which were widely expanded during the 2020 and 2022 election cycles. Opponents, including election integrity groups and Democratic lawmakers, contend that removing these options would disenfranchise voters and create unnecessary barriers to participation. The proposal reignites a contentious debate over voting access and election administration in the crucial swing state of Pennsylvania. California voters recently cast their ballots in what was widely regarded as the most uncertain gubernatorial primary election in years. The race to succeed the incumbent governor saw a crowded field of candidates vying for the top two spots, which advanced to the general election. Pundits and pollsters alike noted the unusual unpredictability, with several contenders showing strong support but no clear frontrunner emerging in the final weeks of campaigning. Early returns indicated a tight contest, reflecting diverse voter sentiment across the state's vast population. The outcome of this highly competitive primary will set the stage for a potentially intense general election campaign later this year. A recent analysis from the Cato Institute suggests that certain economic policies enacted during the Trump administration inadvertently created a precedent that could pave the way for Senator Bernie Sanders' proposed federal sovereign wealth fund. The argument posits that Trump's executive actions, particularly those related to nationalizing supply chains or leveraging federal investment, expanded the conceptual scope of government intervention in the economy. This framework, initially intended for different purposes, could now be cited by proponents of Sanders' plan to establish a publicly owned fund for national investments. The unexpected connection highlights the complex and often unforeseen long-term impacts of presidential economic strategies. During his time in office, former President Donald Trump issued an executive order mandating the vetting of advanced artificial intelligence models for potential national security risks. The directive, signed in 2020, required developers of powerful AI systems to submit their technologies to the U.S. government for rigorous security assessments before widespread public deployment. This proactive measure aimed to safeguard critical infrastructure, protect sensitive data, and prevent malicious state or non-state actors from exploiting cutting-edge AI capabilities. The order underscored the Trump administration's early recognition of AI's dual-use potential and its profound implications for national defense and intelligence. The U.S. Department of Justice has announced it is abandoning a previously allocated fund totaling $1.8 billion, intended for various federal initiatives. The decision, communicated by agency officials this week, comes as part of a broader re-evaluation of departmental priorities and budgetary allocations. While specific reasons for the abandonment were not fully detailed, sources suggest it relates to shifts in enforcement strategies and a reallocation of resources towards more urgent national security concerns. This substantial financial adjustment will necessitate changes to programs and projects that were slated to receive funding from this particular pool. The move reflects significant strategic and fiscal recalculations within the nation's top law enforcement agency. A controversial new proposal circulating in Washington suggests that a future presidential administration could be empowered to block federal grants that do not align with its specific policy agenda. The measure, reportedly championed by allies of former President Donald Trump, aims to ensure that federal funding exclusively supports initiatives that directly advance the administration's priorities. Critics argue that such a policy would politicize academic research, artistic endeavors, and community programs, potentially stifling independent inquiry and innovation. Proponents, however, contend it would ensure taxpayer money is spent efficiently on objectives consistent with the governing mandate. This proposal raises significant questions about the autonomy of grant recipients and the extent of executive influence over federal funding. In California's Fresno County District 4, former police captain Maria Rodriguez has taken a commanding lead in the race for the county supervisor seat, according to the latest vote tally. Rodriguez, who served for 25 years with the Fresno Police Department, has secured nearly 58% of the ballots counted so far, placing her significantly ahead of her nearest rival. Her campaign focused on public safety, fiscal responsibility, and local infrastructure improvements, resonating strongly with district voters. With a substantial portion of votes now tabulated, Rodriguez appears well positioned to secure victory. This strong showing indicates a clear preference among District 4 residents for a candidate with a law enforcement background. In a vibrant display of inclusivity, the steps of St. Petersburg City Hall in Florida have been wrapped in the colors of the LGBTQ+ Pride flag. The initiative, sanctioned by city officials, coincides with Pride Month and serves as a public declaration of support for the city's diverse LGBTQ+ community. This symbolic gesture comes at a time when LGBTQ+ rights and visibility are subjects of intense political debate across Florida. Mayor Ken Welsh stated that the display underscores St. Petersburg's commitment to being a welcoming and affirming city for all its residents. The colorful installation aims to foster a sense of belonging and celebrate diversity within the community. Texas State Representative Gina Hinojosa has vehemently condemned the state's controversial takeover of the Fort Worth Independent School District, FWISD. Speaking at a rally alongside fellow legislator Representative James Tallarico, Hinojosa criticized the intervention as an infringement on local control and democratic governance. The state's decision, initiated by the Texas Education Agency, cited academic underperformance and governance issues within the large urban district. Opponents argue that such takeovers undermine community input and can destabilize educational environments. Hinojosa's strong remarks highlight the ongoing political and educational battle over state authority versus local autonomy in Texas school districts. The United Kingdom government has announced an ambitious new target to cut its carbon emissions by 87% compared to 1990 levels, with a deadline set for 2042. This significant commitment forms a crucial part of the UK's broader strategy to achieve net zero emissions by 2050 and combat climate change. The target will necessitate substantial policy changes across various sectors, including energy, transport, and industry, requiring significant public and private investment. Environmental groups have largely welcomed the accelerated timeline, while industry leaders are assessing the practical implications for their operations. This bold target positions the UK as a leader in climate action, setting a challenging path for decarbonisation over the next 2 decades.